Hello, everybody who's watching us. All right, we are live.
This is Literary Roadhouse. One short story once a week. I'm Gerald.
I'm Andy.
And I'm Anais.
And this week we have been reading Good Country. Oh, I'm going to start that again.
This is why you shouldn't pre-write summaries. I have been against it. I know this one was a lot, though.
Yes.
Gerald pre-wrote the summary, which I said, it's always a mistake. You got to wing it.
Yeah,
right.
Especially because I'm going to interrupt you.
Okay. This week we have been reading Good Country People by Flannery O'Connor. If you haven't read the story yet, pause the podcast, read the story. It's over 8,000 words, so give yourself a little time and return. We open the story with Mrs. Freeman, a dogmatic and judgmental woman who rarely admits her mistakes. She has two daughters, Glenise, who is popular with the men, and Cara May, who is 15, married to Lyman and pregnant. The Freeman family work as tenant farmers for Mrs. Hopewell. She is also judgmental in that either people are good country people or trash. There's no in between with Mrs. Hopewell. She lives her life through cliches such as nothing is perfect and that is life. She divorced her husband long ago. She has a daughter, Joy, who legally changed her name to Holger, had her lower leg blown off in a hunting accident when she was 10, and has a PhD in philosophy. These are great characters. Mrs. Freeman still treats Holger like a child. Holger is described in less than glowing terms, but we see later that she's bright and intelligent. She was brilliant, but didn't have a grain of sense. Mrs. Hopewell judges the Freeman family as good country people, but is upset that her daughter changed her name, and also resents the fact that she studied philosophy, so she can't boast that Joy is a doctor or a teacher, or even a chemical engineer. Mrs. Hopewell and Mrs. Freeman share time at breakfast and are friends. Their domestic life is interrupted by a Bible salesman, Manly Pointer. I knew he'd say something. Who professes to be a good Christian and stays to dinner. On the way out, he walks with Joy Holger, and they agree to meet the following morning. Joy dreams of sleeping with Pointer, but the reality of their assignation turns out to be very different.
Gerald, you were so busy reading what you had pre-written that you couldn't see me multiple times. Just like, what? Did we read the same story? What? All right.
Okay.
I mean, okay, we read the same story, yes, but like there were certain things where like, you'd add your little flavor opinion. I'm like, what? No, what? No. What? Hold on real quick. Andy, did you think Holga wanted to, had fantasized the night before about sleeping with the Bible man? Because I thought she just wanted to mess with him because she's a bad person and she liked the victory of seducing him more than anything else.
That.
Right? She did not want to actually sleep with him. She wanted to mess with him because of religious, simple-minded person. She sees him as a buffoon.
Right. She wanted him to want to sleep with her.
Exactly. She liked the victory. She didn't like him. It's very particular.
I'm
Also,
rubbish at this game.
Also, Mrs. Hopewell doesn't actually think people are trash. Mrs. Hopewell likes to have, like, she is judgmental, but then she always defaults back to everyone can't be the same. And you basically have to treat people as they are. And she, like, is always judo flipping people's flaws into ways that suit her. Anyway, so just saying.
So,
in fact, her inability to actually be suspicious of people is why she was manipulated by the Manly Pointer.
Yeah, you might say that she hopes well.
You might say that. And you might say that Mrs. Freeman, with her more nuanced view of the world, is a little bit more free. Okay.
And you might say that Holga is a funny word.
You might say that. You might also say that Holga and her mother are the same person, just doppelgangers of each other. These are things that I will say on the show. But it was just funny because you were saying things like, oh, she fantasized about sleeping with the Bible. And I'm like, what? No, she didn't. Holga is a nasty person, and I love her.
Well, it's all according to what you read into it.
Yeah.
That's what I read into it. There's no wrong or right. He said, defending himself.
No, you're right. One of the things that's so refreshing about reading just a master of the craft, a genius of literary writing, is that this story on the surface is gripping. It, like you said, it was over 8,000 words. Didn't feel like it. I was like on a tractor beam, and I'm just like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And then there's still depth. There's still things to read into it. She never beats you over the head with whatever point she is or may not even be trying to make, which is just so good. Because like we talk a lot about literary fiction that's like missing that surface level story, or like the things that we complain about with other literary stories, you cannot complain about with this one. At least I think so. Andy, are you disagreeing?
I just think.
Yeah.
I appreciate all of the characters' names. And there was one name you didn't touch on, which I felt was most meaningful. Mr. Pointer's kind of a dick.
Oh my God, Andy, we get it.
He's been chuckling at that all afternoon.
He has been. Manly
It's funny
Pointer.
because
penises.
penises.
Yeah,
That's the joke.
got it. Okay, but Andy, did you like the story? Names aside.
Yeah, it was fine. I didn't realize it until I was halfway through. I had read this in college.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, Flannery O'Connor, I like that. I read the one with the girl with the wooden leg. I wonder if I'll like this one. And then halfway through, I was like, oh, this is the one. And then I was like, well, I wonder if my analysis will be any more nuanced this time around. And it turns out, no, still just really, this guy's name is Dick. Okay.
I'm glad you've learned nothing on the podcast. That's really reassuring to me and to our listeners. That's what I want to hear.
Don't look to me for insight. That's all I can
I
say.
didn't name him Manly Pointer.
Too distracted by the pun. Not even, yeah. Gerald, did you like the story?
What did I like? Yeah, because obviously didn't understand it at all. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it more than I thought. I think I struggled with the start because I struggled to get into my head who everyone was and what their relationships were. But then once I sorted that out, yeah, I did enjoy it. It was just, I love the characters. They're just so wacky and out there and fascinating. And she's a really, really good writer.
Wow. Okay. I'm giving it a 6. I would give it a 6.5 if I could. I thought that opening was brilliant. I loved everything about it. I thought it was so good. Like it's just
What, we're rating already?
Wow.
I'm just putting out the game.
Jumping straight to 6?
Yes.
Let's talk about the story. No, it's a 6.
Exactly. I'm not going to talk about the story with two dudes who are sitting there like, yeah, I guess it was fine. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
I believe I had a glowing endorsement for the name Manly Pointer.
Well, are you going to rate Manly Pointer separately from the rest of the story?
Yes.
A throbbing in boy.
Name of Manly Pointer, 7 out of 6.
Yeah.
Incredible. Okay. So let's just start with the surface
convince
level.
us then.
Yeah.
I will convince you. No problem.
Yeah.
I got
This
this.
is 6 out of 6.
6.5. Listen,
Don't do that.
I'm doing it. No, I shouldn't do it. I'm not doing it.
No,
Okay.
don't do it.
That
You'll
was
regret it.
okay. So let's start with the surface level plot. Andy, you seem to have the most shrug sort of about how the story unfolds. What was like, were you gripped by it or not? And what exactly happens? And yeah.
Okay, I wasn't gripped as immediately by it. Like, it takes a good moment for me to even be like, what? Like, who's even the character here? Like, who's the background character? What's going on? Like, these people are eating dinner, or breakfast, but then we don't care about them for most of the story. So it takes a minute to figure out who's gonna be doing actions in this story.
Yeah.
Like, it's mostly about Hulga and Manly Pointer, with the other people in there and supporting and building a bigger picture, but they're the ones who do things. But Hulga doesn't show up for a while, and Manly Pointer doesn't show up for even longer. And it just, it took me a while. I'm not saying I don't like it, but I'm not going to give it this glowing endorsement. It took me a while to figure out what was going on and why it mattered.
Okay, Gerald.
What was the question?
The plot, did it grip you? Did it not?
Oh,
Why?
sorry.
Yeah.
You see, you're not amused by my lack of enthusiasm for this story. It didn't grip me. I don't know. I don't know why it didn't grip me. I loved the characters. I was fascinated by the characters. The plot, it was okay.
I like the bit where he steals her leg.
So done with you guys. Okay,
That's
so
funny.
so done. Okay,
She thinks they're gonna do a
We're
sex
allowed
thing,
to
and then he takes her
disagree.
leg and runs away.
Yeah,
we're allowed to disagree when there's things to disagree on. Because let me tell you something right now.
What?
The story. The
Yeah.
reason I love the plot so much is because Flannery O'Connor is a genius who kept us so focused on how these people view the world, made it really clear that's what this is important here, and then introduced this fucking bowling ball into this that deftly manipulates the two most sort of blinkered people in the story. Like, Manly Pointer is great. What Manly Pointer does to Mrs. Hopewell and to Hulga is great. And the way that he so expertly sees through them and manipulates them both is wonderful. And that game, that like social, that interpersonal drama was so good. Okay, full disclosure, I love really well drawn out interpersonal drama, but yeah, like she just took it to another level. So remember a few weeks ago I was raving about Edith Wharton's The Age of Innocence, and it was a lot of this kind of stuff, and it was good. And Flannery O'Connor's like even better. Well, they're both really good. I shouldn't say that, but slightly different. And just how do you take a plot that's interesting enough to read, but is ultimately about people's emotions, thoughts, worldviews, beliefs, and then turn that into something that makes a point?
You name a character Manly Pointer.
Yeah.
To me, I think the problem I have with it is that the characters are almost too interesting in that it detracts from the story, because they're almost comic characters in the way they view the world, and the Hulga stomping around, although she doesn't need to make that much noise, but she does, and she's large and she's treated like a child, but she has a PhD. It's like a character, but then taken that bit further, and then so it's sort of almost verging on comedy in places to me, and so it sort of distracts, I think, from the sort of the meanings underneath it, because on the top is this cast of almost grotesque characters that are acting out this play.
I think it is funny. I think it's meant to be funny, and that's what makes her such a genius. That you can sort of, I don't know, Andy, I don't know if you have anything to add to what Gerald just said, or if I should just like go into.
Well, yeah, I guess I just feel like that's the flip side of. I don't remember if Gerald's complained, and maybe he hasn't, and that's why, and this is what he likes. But when the story doesn't have enough on top, then I don't care what deeper meanings are underneath. So now if Gerald's saying, oh, there's too much going on up top, maybe that's just the thing.
It's not that there's too, because Anais asked about plot, and for me, the extremity of the characterization sort of took me out of the plot. If the characters had been sort of toned down a little bit, so that they were interesting, but not as extreme, then maybe they would have fitted into the plot better. They sort of stuck up from the plot for me, and it became all about the characters, which were great, and less about the plot.
But a lot of plot is character arcs, right? Which we've discussed before. It's not always an external thing that a character is working towards or doing. It's more any change that's happening in the character itself can be an arc. So I'm just going to sort of like go into what I was trying to talk about earlier, which is in Mrs. Hopewell and in Holga, you have two people who see the world in very simple-minded ways and think they can control it through the way that they see it. So Mrs. Hopewell, optimistic, and is always saying these like upbeat platitudes and is so she uses kindness as a way to sort of get ahead, and she has this sort of self-made delusion of the world. And Holga's the opposite. She's pessimistic. She uses rudeness. And the funny thing is they both think they're superior to everyone else in their worldview and that they are right. And one thing that's interesting is that Holga is described as blind through sheer will, that she blinds herself through sheer will. Then you have Mrs. Freeman and Manly Pointer on the other side, who have a more nuanced view of the world. Mrs. Freeman is a little bit more orderly, but she loves the grotesque. And to me, Manly Pointer is like a chaos agent. He's just like running around, seeing people for what they are and just like getting his whatever it is, and is also sort of obsessed with the grotesque in a different way. So I just love how it's Manly Pointer comes in and Mrs. Hopewell's trying to get rid of him. He sees her for who she is, and then he manipulates her with some line about how like, oh, I know you probably don't have time for country folk. Like just like plays on her whole, like you're supposed to love salt of the earth kind of people, and totally wins and gets a free meal out of it. And a lot of her time. And then
and a leg.
And well, later, Holga thinks she sees this simple-minded religious creature that she can totally like, she just wants to ruin his worldview. She wants to come in, seduce him, and then be like, and there is no God. And then he turns around and he's just like, ugh. He like basically rolls her eyes at her and steals her leg. And just basically, like you see inside his suitcase, it's only 2 copies of the Bible, and there's like, it's got the cutouts with like the whiskey in it and all kinds of other stuff and like pornographic playing cards, and he doesn't give a shit, and he will say and do whatever it takes to just do whatever. He's like a grifter. So I just love how Manly Pointer comes in and basically says you're both wrong. And Mrs. Freeman, who is lightly being mocked throughout the story by both Mrs. Hopewell and Holga, both think down on her, right? Is closer to the truth of what the world actually, how the world actually functions in either of them. That's why the story is brilliant. And it starts and ends with Mrs. Freeman in a brilliant way. So I loved it. And Flannery O'Connor deserved all the praise she's ever gotten.
Okay.
Well, not about all the praise she's ever gotten. I'm sure she's gotten undeserved praise at some time.
I don't know. Have I convinced either of you?
Nah.
Oh yeah. I was born convinced.
What?
Okay, Gerald, why didn't I convince you?
Because I've come to my opinion. I've and I can't because I struggle with this story. It was sort of, I struggled with analysis. I struggled with the summary. I got that wrong, obviously, and I struggled. And then when I looked for some sort of help with the summary, and I got deep into some sort of literary analyses, I just think, and I put on Twitter, I said, is there cliff notes for cliff notes? Because I didn't understand the cliff notes. It's so for, in a way, the deep sort of allegories and the deeper meanings of this didn't come through for me, and so so for me, it is what it is. It's one of those phrases. It is what it is. People are like they are, and so it's I enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed thinking about it, but it's not going to be one that stays with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I feel like that's just sort of not even the story's fault. That's the pitfall of academia, really, where the Flannery O'Connor is so well known, and the story is so well known that tons of bullshit's been written about it that's completely meaningless. Has nothing to do with anything.
Oh yeah, I realise that, and I think that there are examples here and with other things and with popular music of them being over-analysed and people stretching to see meaning into stuff that there is no meaning. There is the curtains are blue because the curtains are blue. There's a famous phrase or something. So it's there. There's no. But what I was trying to say is that I got nothing from. Normally, you can get something, some sort of insight to base your thoughts on from this sort of literary analysis, and it was just far too in depth. So what I'm left with is how I view the story and how I felt about the story, and I enjoyed it, but it's not going to be a 6, I'm afraid.
Wow.
Well, maybe I can convince you, Gerald.
Go on.
So obviously, these characters are more caricatures than anything else, right? They're sort of comedic little segments of a full worldview, and the names obviously have very important meanings here. Now, there's 2 characters who choose their own name. One is Hulga, and the other one is named Manly Pointer.
All right.
Isn't that funny?
I thought you were going somewhere with this.
I was. His name's Manly Pointer.
Oh my goodness. All right. I got to get you guys off of this. So the last thing that I want to comment on is just that, as I was doing a little bit of research, apparently Flannery O'Connor does this a lot, where she sort of undermines the intellectual sense of control, which I like.
Okay.
Fun fact about Flannery O'Connor that may be apocryphal. This is a half-remembered fact, so don't quote me on this. She apparently wanted to be airdropped into France to fight the Nazis.
Wow.
This is true.
While she was an elderly woman afflicted with lupus.
Awesome.
Can you please cite this?
She was never an elderly woman. She died at 39.
Oh, okay. Just afflicted with lupus.
Just wow. Which is horrible. What a shame. 39.
All right. Okay. I sort of said everything that I really wanted to say. I feel like you guys aren't here with this. Like, you didn't really. Is there anything else that you guys want to say about the story? Anything about the prose?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now again, and it's good. Like you said when you read it, it sort of dragged you along at 90 miles an hour, and it was just the initial sort of few paragraphs where I struggled to engage with it, but after that, I thought it was really good. So I enjoyed the reading of it, and I enjoyed, even coming back to sort of, I think it's 3 times I've read it now, and it's the last time it was as good as the first. It was, and the second and third times were better because I understood the characters and knew who the characters were. So yeah, she can write a bit. That's pretty good. I like. So she's yeah. Nothing much more to say.
Okay. Do you want to add anything, Andy?
I mean, not anything substantial. She's not Flannery O'Connor. It's it's a good story.
All right. Fine. We will rate this story. I am giving it a 6. Where are you guys coming in?
I don't know. I feel guilty now. I feel bad.
You don't have to feel guilty, but maybe you should feel bad.
Yes.
Don't feel guilty. Just feel bad.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't know then. Now. No, I'll give it a 5.
Okay, Andy.
Yeah, I think a 5. Now, as we discussed, though, name of manly pointer, 7 out of 6. Story
Excellent.
overall,
Mm-hmm.
5.
Okay. All right, cool. You guys can be as long as you like. This makes me want to read even more Flannery O'Connor.
That's fine. We can read more of it. I don't mind.
Great. We will. Okay, so
Good. Wait, how many more characters are named manly pointer
I
in the
will
rest of her
do
works?
I will do a search for hilarious character named Flannery O'Connor, and we'll do every story that has one.
Good.
Anais is as annoyed with us as I've ever seen her.
Yes, I am. This is probably the most annoyed I've been with you guys in a while, because it's like,
Wow.
guys.
We gave it a 5.
Yeah, I know,
come
but you
on.
did. Yeah. All right. So, there's no game this week because next week we're welcoming Caitlin Hamilton Sumi or Sumi. I should have asked her. She is the author of the short story collection "To Lay to Rest Our Ghosts." Caitlin has recommended that we read Enid and Floyd and the Moon by Jean Shoemaker. It's exciting.
That's a funny name, too.
It's a funny name. Also,
Shoemaker.
Enid and Floyd and the Moon, I think, is science fiction. It was in a science fiction magazine, so I'm excited for that.
They're making stories in that shoes. So, you think that's part of the analysis?
Oh, Andy.
I think you could add it to the analysis, yes.
All right, I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. A story written by a shoemaker. Okay. So, I hope there's shoes in the story now.
Yeah.
So before you go, share your simple upbeat platitudes on our Facebook group, Literary Roadhouse Readers, or on Twitter at Literary Roadhouse, or our website, literaryroadhouse.com. Are you seeking more nuance in your worldview? Join the Literary Roadhouse Book Club, where we discuss a novel each month. And lastly, this story has inspired Andy to take up the con man life as a fake Bible-selling grifter. Support Andy's new chaotic identity and our podcast expenses at patreon.com/Literary Roadhouse. Every bit helps. And as always, share this podcast with the men who pop styes in the backseat of cars. Until next time, read a good story.
Yikes.